Hello YouTube, it's me again, and I'm trying something a little bit different. I am doing a Logan discussion. First off, I have one of my old Wolverine comic books, and yes, I am actually holding it, because the last time I edited any film was in college back in the late 90s, and it was analog, not digital, so yeah, I kinda suck. So anyway, I'm just going to hold the comic here, and also I'm tired of having my ugly face on camera. And I decided to talk about Logan, do a review, discussion, whatever you want to call it, because Wolverine was one of my favorite characters. I was first introduced to the character in the mid-80s. Early to mid-80s with the Mattel Secret War toy line. I think it was like 7 or 8 when it came out. And from the toy line, I got into the comic book. Yeah, I absolutely love I don't like the X-Men. I never got into the X-Men. I am strictly a Wolverine fan when it comes to that. And as somebody who loved the character as a kid, who read the comics into my early to mid-teens, this movie was really special to me. First off, I never saw an X-Men movie before this, and I was glad that it didn't matter. You don't have to, but you should have some familiarity with the character. If you're coming in cold and have no attachment to it, then it's not going to probably mean much to you. But again, if that's the case, why would you? But to me, this was the perfect send-off to a character I loved from my youth. And first off, let's talk about the movie. A lot of people compare it to a Western. To me, it felt more like, say, a Billy Jack. Like one of those, in aesthetic and design, like one of those high-grade B movies from the late 60s, early 70s, say like 67 to 73. The look of the film, the soundtrack, the graininess of the graininess of the film stock, the fonts used in the credits. I felt like I was watching a film in a drive-in or midnight movie from like I said, 67 to 73. Obviously, I wasn't born yet at that time, but from watching them later on, on TV, it really felt like that. It felt like a throwback to those films more than so a Western. Another thing I liked about the film is, I often said when a fantastic fiction novel or film, in order to be great, you have to be able to take all the fantastic elements out of it and still have it work. If you take all the demon stuff out of The Exorcist, you still have a story about a priest who's losing his faith, trying to look after his elderly mother, and a single mother trying to forge a career in acting while looking after her young daughter who has emotional mental issues. That's a good story on its own. And with Logan, if you take out all the superhero elements, you're still left with a middle-aged man who finds out he's a father, is introduced to the young daughter he never knew, and who's looking after his elderly father, and the three of them go on a road trip. That would be an excellent movie regardless. Alright, I'm going to switch up hands here. Alright, so yeah. Don't want to see me. This would be a good movie without the superhero elements. Just like The Exorcist is a great movie without the whole demon possession stuff. When fantastic movies fail, and I use fantastic fiction as code for magic, medieval fantasy, horror, sci-fi. That's my umbrella term for it. Is when it's all about the spaceships or the aliens or the monsters or this, that, or it's not about the story or characters. Okay, so Logan would work just as a standalone without any of the superhero stuff. And what Logan does also, it tells a very human, deep story. And it also tells a pretty meta story too. First, let's get to the deep story. The story of a man who's had a hard life, who's kind of resigned himself and sequestered himself. It's a very real story. The story of a man who tried to do well, but who failed and who's given up, and who now is forced to try and be good again, and having that continue to blow up in his face. But despite that, still struggles on. That is very Norse. In Norse mythology, they believe that eventually even the gods would be killed. That evil, darkness would eventually subsume everything, and the heroes, the gods, would succumb. So, the glory is not in light triumphing over darkness, because it can't. It won't for long. The glory comes in the struggle itself. You know you can't win. You know you are going to fail. But you struggle on anyway, because that's the glory of it. That's a very deep message. Because let's face it, all of us are going to die. Spoiler alert. Okay? You're going to die, I'm going to die. My yet as unborn great-great-great-grandchildren are going to die. Our solar system will die. Our galaxy will die. Eventually the universe itself will cease to exist. So, in a very real sense, all of human experience is pointless. It's meaningless. Okay? So if we're doing stuff because we want to have permanence and be immortal, like people say Shakespeare is immortal, Mozart's immortal, no. They'll be as forgotten as you and me. Everything they've done will be as equally as lost as what we've done. Nobody's going to remember Caesar Augustus in the end, because there will be nobody left to remember Caesar Augustus. But that's not the point. The point is your life here, now, getting up every day, doing the best you can, knowing that eventually all this is going to end anyhow. That is a very deep and very positive message. Some people have said, oh, it's so dark. It's not dark and depressing. Look at what happens at the end. Logan sacrifices himself trying to save these children, and he does. Like I said, the movie's been out long enough. I'm not going to do that spoiler warning nonsense. If you haven't seen the film by now, you're not going to. And if you have, you know what's going to happen. Alright? So, yeah, if you're one of these people who all freak out, like, why did you say spoilers? Eat you. Okay? I'm not playing that game. But Logan sacrifices himself to save the New Mutant children so they can have a chance to live and have a better life. That is epic. That idea is rooted in many mythologies. It's rooted in the mythology of Christianity, with Christ dying on the cross to redeem humanity. Shades of it in the Moses myth, where he leads his children through the desert, but because of his past sin, cannot go himself. Okay? The hero who sacrifices himself to save others. That is deeply rooted in human mythos. So it touches on, so with the Norse mythology, with, you know, the shades to that, and, you know, the one who sacrifices himself to save others. These teach on very old themes. So, and at the end, when the children go off, they're now free. They can go and live because of what Logan did. Even though he can't go with them, they're still free. And in the end, he has solace in that. His life and everything he's been through has now been made worth it because he's done this thing. Okay, so yes, it is a redemption story. Another thing where it becomes meta is how it is all the subtle ways it comments on how media control our lives. Alright, Laura Kinney, I call her that because X-23 is what her corporate creators called her. It's dehumanizing. Her name's Laura Kinney. Also, the new Wolverine. You know that if you read the comics. She doesn't know Wolverine. She doesn't know Logan. She knows the comic books. Okay? Her hero is not the man, but the myth. And like so many of us, that's what we idolize, the mythos of our favorite heroes, our favorite artists, actors, musicians, our favorite politicians. And it's the mythos, it's the myth, it's the image that lives. I mean, she only spent, about a week with Logan? Is a week really that long to try and get to know somebody? And a lot of the times he was closed off to her. So when she is at the grave and she's beside him and he's dying and she's weeping, calling him daddy, and when she's at the grave, it's not him, it's his image. That is what she's taking away. And when she's eulogizing and she's quoting the movie Shane, it shows how entertainment has now become the new religion. It's not the Bible she's quoting from, the Torah, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, or any other religious text. It's a movie. Movies, TV, all these are our religion. They so pervade our lives. Another case in point is when I was younger, I played with Transformers. And I played with Masters of the Universe figures. When the Masters of the Universe cartoon came out, they completely retconned He-Man's backstory. But that was the story that got picked up, and now that's the story that's told in every other incarnation of Masters of the Universe. Same way with Transformers. The cartoon had big differences from the toy line. Rumble was red and black, Frenzy was dark blue and light blue. In the comic, that got reversed, and now that's how people see it. That's how people accept it. When people talk about the past and how great it was, listen to how they talk. Listen to their references. They're not making historical references. They're talking about TV shows. They're talking about Leave It to Beaver, the Andy Griffith Show. You know, that's become our new reality, not what was actually going on at this time, at this place. Because if you think about it, the 50s weren't that great. You had the civil rights movement starting. You had a lot of overt racism and sexism. I mean, people of color, women, the LGBT community had no rights. You had the threat of nuclear annihilation. I mean, come on now. Let's be real. You still had gut-wrenching poverty through large swaths of the country. You had problems with crime and gangs. But yet when you hear people talk, it's the idyllic sitcom version of that era that they talk about and reference. And with referencing the comic books and Logan holding it up, it's a very smart way of making this point. It's like, media is reality. Reality is the source material for media. So it is a very smart, very intellectual film. And I think that's one thing that's really lost on people. Another complaint I hear is that Professor X went out like a punk. Well, not everybody gets that big death. And that's true in life. A lot of the reason why people glom onto conspiracy theories is just like, well, Jack Kennedy could not have been killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald's nobody and Kennedy was this. Kennedy was a man with a title. Lee Harvey Oswald was a man with a gun. Alright? The effects of a bullet are the same on a president, a prime minister, as anybody else. Yes, a president was taken out by a nobody. But they're all still people. The laws of physics do not change because of title or personal appreciation. So, Professor X going out like that was very real. And this movie felt real. Alright? As somebody who watched their grandmother suffer from dementia, I related to what Logan was going through. As someone who watched their own mother slowly wither away during the last year of her life, it was very real, very relatable. And it's that realness that made it so special. Because now I'm invested. I can relate. I'm not just watching things go boom. So, anyway. This was a great film. Well acted. Well written. And I highly recommend getting it on Blu-ray or DVD. Definitely see it in the theaters if you still can. So yeah, Logan, the movie, awesome. Wolverine, awesome. I'm glad I saw it. So, yeah. I like I said, highly recommend. The best comic book movie of all. Better than The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was a great film. It's a more epic film. But it's one of those films where, if you think about it too much, it falls apart. Like, I love me some Batman, but the moment you go, what does Batman do if he has to go to the bathroom while he's on patrol? Everything collapses. And there's a lot of stuff in The Dark Knight you have to overlook. It's like, well, when did Joker have time to plant all those bombs in the hospital? Didn't anybody see them? You know, stuff like that. And yes, every movie has those sort of issues. But because the underlying story of Logan was so good and so real, it makes overlooking those even better. Even easier. So, anyway, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's good. If you had seen it, good on you. I definitely plan to buy it when it comes out. Alright. That's it for my discussion on Logan. Now, I've been thinking about using this as a springboard to talk more about comic books. Over the past couple of years, I've kind of gotten back into them because I've started meeting people in the comics film, artists and writers and stuff, and that's gotten me re-interested. Although it's also reintroduced me to some of the things I hated about the comic book community. But then I think I can use that as discussion material. So maybe this is the first in a comic book line, maybe not. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.